You're live.
So good evening. It is 5 p.m. It is Tuesday. It is the 18th of January, and the year is 2022. This is streaming live on YouTube. The meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of Pitkin County, Colorado. The regular meeting is called to order. For our quorum this evening, we have Jasmine, Suzanne, Chelsea, and Cliff. And I think Monty and Jill may be joining us. From staff, we have Bonnie, Ellen, and Laura Armstrong joining us. And again, my thank you to Laura for joining us. I know it's short notice and I apologize. We're called to order. So our first order of business, we usually ask for commissioner comments unrelated to Laura's community 501 person community survey or Ellen and Cindy's joint meeting. So commissioner comments unrelated to Laura's survey or the BOCC joint meeting a week from today. No commissioner comments. You're busy all ordering your free at-home COVID tests from the United States government because you gave up on CDPHE. Totally understood. Staff comments unrelated to this evening's agenda. Suzanne's no and Ellen's no. Again, I think you just spent a day in BOCC meetings. Laura, anything for us unrelated to your presentation? This is a public meeting. I'm only looking at this in Zoom mode. Bonnie, anyone with a hand raised outside of the 9 people that I see?
We do not have a hand raised, but we do have one attendee on, Molly Haberman. Just so you're aware, she does not have her hand raised at this time.
I didn't get Molly's surname, sorry.
Haberman, H-A-B-E-R-M-A-N.
Any public comments, Molly, unrelated to Laura's presentation or our joint meeting with the county commissioners? Excellent. So we have 2 discussion items this evening. The first one is the community survey discussion, which is with Ellen and Cindy. And again, I'm done saying thank you to Laura, but we're really glad you're here. You presented this once before, again, to the county commissioners. Just to frame this, the planning and zoning commissioners were asked to read the 400 pages, digest it, and then relate it back to some of the challenges in terms of growth, in terms of community, in terms of affordable housing, basically relate that back to what we do in planning and zoning. And so each of the commissioners this evening is coming in with their list. Our goal for the joint meeting with the BOCC in a week is to address some of their questions and concerns that they voiced earlier today. And so there were particular issues they raised, but also again, sort of take the data and all the work that you've put together in the survey and see if we can relate some of the questions and concerns we have as planning and zoning commissioners to that. And so to that end, I would love to see in the next week, a single memo, if you will, come out of P&Z that really represents what we would like to address with, and Alex, thank you for joining us, what we would like to address with the county commissioners as opposed to a free-for-all a week from tonight. And so Laura, that's not your responsibility, but certainly P&Z, getting to some closure this evening with Ellen and Suzanne's guidance and Bonnie's guidance, that would be wonderful. And Alex, thank you for joining us as well. Appreciate it. So, and I see a hand up with Suzanne.
Sorry, my finger. Just quickly, yes, thank you to Laura for coming last minute. Laura also can only be with us till 5:45, so I just want to let you know that. So if if there's anything that, and as you start your discussion, if you really want to be able to direct to Laura in terms of questions or anything, just that she won't be able to stay with us for the whole meeting. So
ideally, Laura, I think if we're going to throw it back to you then, so you can actually leave before 5:45. We're better than the county commissioners. We're not elected officials. We would love from you sort of some of that nuance, some of the detail that you're still working on, a little bit more of the color into the survey. We're not interested in the methodology. We know there was 501 respondents. Again, think about it from affordable housing growth, transportation, what can we touch as planning and zoning? And, how do we address some of those weak points that were in the survey? I think, they're towards like the third or fourth page, the graphics and, all the way at the bottom was community development and permit times. We won't touch on that tonight, but that would be the most useful. So sort of, I think around pages 3 and 4. And Suzanne Caskey before we turn over to Laura.
Excuse me. You can hear me?
Yes.
I would suggest that our assignment was to all watch the video and then come up with our individual 3 choices. And so I would say that if we've all watched it, unless people have specific questions of Laura, she could go and we can start listing each of our top 3 choices instead of hearing her tell it again, because we've all heard it. And Laura, it was great. Fascinating. So Jeffrey, what do you think?
Jasmine.
I agree with Suzanne.
I'm just going to smile for a while.
And Jeffrey, I think that was our intention in inviting Laura, was more as a resource as opposed to regurgitating the information that people received, but more if anybody had questions or, again, just to be more of a resource if useful.
Excellent. Any questions for Laura from the 400 pages?
And may I interrupt for a second? I assume that all of our P&Z members have been introduced to Laura, but if not, she is the Peking County Communications Director, and she was the staff person that worked with the consultant on the survey. So she is very well informed, and she doesn't have a lot of time. So I am going to refrain from giving some of the background that I want to share with you till after we have an opportunity to express your opinion, to hear your opinions about where we're going as from the survey results we've heard, and to just go forward with that and let Laura respond to questions. But I also want to let you know that Alex Sanchez has joined us. And for those of you who don't know Alex, he is also in the Community Development Department. He is our Community Development Analyst, and he's going to be involved in a lot of our growth management conversations moving forward. So he's here tonight to help in directing this conversation as need be. So just wanted to introduce everybody, and I'll turn it over to you all, to Jeffrey, to direct the conversation about where you all think we should be moving in terms of addressing community issues that have been raised in this survey.
Excellent. So Laura, I have one specific question, which is directly then related to comms and communications. And one of the, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we've got, it seems to me, umpteen resources that are communicating with us. So whether that's Everbridge or the website, and I'll frame it as the P&Z question. So part of what we may be faced with is doing more community outreach. And I know you've heard that through the BOCC, but I guess the question is, personally, I'm on Civic Alerts and Everclear or Everbridge, whatever it's called, that I feel like the county does an amazing job at communicating. And that's the same for Eagle and the same for Garfield, to be honest. And I guess the question would be, is there anything that we've learned through the community survey is there a better way that we need to engage the community, both as a citizen board, as well as if we're looking to update land use with respect to, growth and sort of the other issues that came up through the community. So that's a pretty broad question for you. We can't hear you, sorry.
Can't hear me?
Now we can.
strange. Let me know if audio goes out
Okay.
again and I can try and switch
Yeah.
to another headphone method. But one of the key things the survey consultant, ETC Institute, really did pull out was the importance of communication around our services and getting the word out, and that many of the spaces where we see decreasing satisfaction could also just be due to perception. So I think that for local government across the board, communication is really key. In particular, ETC and Ryan, the consultant that worked with us, noted that our website is one of the spaces, pickencounty.com,
Right.
where the community does go to get information, and there is a decreasing satisfaction, which is something that we're aware of, and in the plans for 2022 is to do some updating work on the website. That being said, there isn't a ton more granularity for ways to improve communications, but we can make some inferences. I should say one other question that we did gather data on was that there is pretty high satisfaction with opportunities to volunteer and get involved with Pitkin County, whether that be on boards, through volunteering, through surveys, et cetera. So the involvement had a higher satisfaction than the sort of the website and one way informing communications. So I think from an overarching perspective there, we also have learned a lot from the pandemic, and about both having a website and information sources that are easily searchable and updatable and whatnot, but also putting information out in spaces where you're really meeting the community where they are, rather than relying on the community going to your website to come and find the information. And so in the current age that we're in, that's using a lot of digital channels, because we don't have as many in-person opportunities right now. I really hope that we'll be back in more in-person spaces soon when that feels safe. But so the use of social media, also digital advertising, et cetera, we can start to think through those spaces where we might, catch someone's eye, a community member's eye. Those are some of the lessons we've learned from pandemic communications. I guess one final note that we continue to learn about or continue to hear in surveys is that our community still reads the newspaper. It's amazing, and it's really different than national trends. But the newspaper continues to be a space to catch people's attention and make them aware of different items. So I think those are some of the particulars for our community. I think communications is a forever journey as well, and will forever be something that probably scores high on the can improve here metric.
I personally miss some of your analog communications. When the county sends out we really don't take care of your roads and we don't take care of them well, and they replace that with, please go to our website to see how we don't take care of your roads, and we don't use mag on on your roads, etc. So I miss those detailed, wonderful postcards that you used to send that now tell me to go to your website. But that's just probably old guy dude in the mountains. So don't forget analog. It still works really well.
Yeah.
So I would love if you have another half hour, which we have you, that we turn it back to the commissioners so you hear the feedback. And again, the emphasis from the commissioners is how does the feedback relate to sort of page 3, page 4. So for example, rather than talk about TDRs or GMQS, we talk about how, it dovetails into the growth slides. If that makes sense, we're trying to keep it at the strategic level. And before we go straight into, the weeds about subdivisions and Colorado state statute. So, and Suzanne Caskey, maybe you want to lead us off? But we need vocals though.
There. I tried to follow the instructions that Suzanne Wolf sent out, um, and then come down with what each of us was supposed to end up with, and that is our three top choices. And it was pretty clear to me in reading through it what we as a P&Z could have some sway in and what we could not. So these are my, Jeffrey.
Sorry, I'm working on my theater lighting.
Oh, I see. Okay. So so these are my top three choices. And it was easy for me to see places that it's inappropriate or ineffective for us as a P&Z to get involved, and have the land use things and the kinds of things that P&Z looks at come to the top, because the other we could take forever talking about. And so I'm hoping if I tell you my top three choices, then each of you will tell the rest of us your three choices, and then let's see where we go from there. So my top three, number one was climate, and dealing with, well, as it was stated in the that's different from the way it's stated in the report and in the video, but climate issues are my top. As I saw it, unless each of us makes that our top priority in asking the BOCC to go forward, we might as well not deal with any of it, because it's not going to make any difference, because we'll just keep getting worse and worse. And already there's a lot of data in the planning office on climate change and how the built environment is highly associated with that. So the top one was my top three, climate change. The next one was growth management. And the third one was protection of the natural environment. And as that was stated in the survey, and it came out very high in terms of what the public wants done, it was stated there as continuing to develop a flourishing or protect a flourishing natural environment. And in my mind, all three of those go together beautifully. And I can't see that we could take any of them out. That's including the way the public looked at it, the way I looked at it, and the way those three are interwoven. So those were my three.
So can we drill down on any of those three with respect to how does it impact land use code? If we turn around to Cindy right now and said, hey, great, write those three. What in the built environment? We know, what would you like to see a week from today discussed with the BOCC, and how do we turn around and write code? So how do we go from that sort of, and I love the 50,000 feet, that's where I want to be, but then how do we go down, a couple notches and say, here are the things that we're still not, we're still putting new natural gas all along Highway 82. Let's be like California and no nat gas.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I think that we are at the policy level now. We're even pre-policy level, because what we're being asked to do is look at this community survey, period, and name our top three priorities out of all of the priorities that we could choose. We don't have to know at this point how it will be done, what we are particularly concerned about. We just have to give the commissioners a nudge in saying climate is an issue, our natural landscapes are an issue, growth management is an issue. Now get on with it, because we're standing behind you. And I have spoken to every one of the commissioners in the recent past about this, because a year ago, a full year ago, when they went on their retreat, they came back saying that these were their issues, growth management and looking at growth through the lens of climate change was their top priority. And I don't see us getting anywhere. I mean, I know that things are going on at the staff level, but I think that we have to come together as members of the community to say to them, we heard you say it last year, we agree with it, it's a top priority. Now you and staff figure out how you're going to go forward, and we're going to be there cheering you on. And then they will come back to us. I mean, I know that the planning office has data that they are sitting there poised and ready to bring to us. And then we can start coming up with the objectives.
So
I think we're trying to come up with goals right now.
Okay. Jasmine? I'm just going in order in which you attended the meeting.
Okay. My priorities in terms of the things that I think P&Z can be involved in effectively, first would be managing growth. The second would be affordable housing, and the third would be climate.
So again, same question I posed to Suzanne, which is how do we then, is it reforming GMQS competition? Is it reduction in house size? What would the specific sort of measurable, in a year, how do we show that we actually, you know, we just don't, we're just not teed up for another retreat, and we're using, you know, last year's survey. So anything further specific that we could add to?
Not really, because I don't have certain information that I should have in order to elaborate on this bizarre theory that I have about part of the problem is the lack of timeliness in providing the housing that's supposed to be mitigating the projects.
Right.
So that the projects are way ahead of the housing mitigation in terms of timeliness, in addition to everything else. But I think that I don't know the mechanism for actually getting a grip on the numbers that I want, and when I do, I'll probably be a pest about it. But until I have that kind of information, my theory is still just a theory.
Cool. So so from an action standpoint, you would love to see an update on the exaction, how we're spending the fees, and the update to the build-out data, which would include the caucus by caucus build-out data that was presented probably in Q4. And I think that would be really helpful because it does give, it sort of answers, again, a lot of the questions in Laura's survey, which are around growth and growth pressures. So if you're in a valley like Bohan Gulch, I'll just make one up, which is where I live, you know, we're at 80 or 90% capacity, you know, we're almost at full build-out. And is that really the case? So I think that would be useful for both the planning commissioners, staff, and the county commissioners.
Yes, I agree.
Cool. It was interesting that you put climate third. I will leave personal opinion out of the way.
Mostly because I don't really think that I can figure out a way to make climate some kind of criterion that we could use. Although there are probably ways to do it, as Suzanne said, if we decided that it was one of our priorities, which it is for me. This would definitely be something that would be outside my area of expertise in terms of how it would affect land use. And maybe that's why I put it down as third, not because I don't think it's important, but what I think we can do most effectively as a P&Z. So is like more on the.
So I think again, just to go back to Laura and Suzanne and Ellen and Alex, it would be nice to see the closeout on the permit data for the past 2 years post the change to the land use code where we updated with old Brian. So specifically, are we improving the envelope and the building for the past 2 years? You know, do we have any closeout data, whether that's from Core or from Pitkin County, given that we updated the land use code, you know, stricter IBC, stricter envelope, stricter fenestration, et cetera. It would be really nice to see, you know, our buildings 20% more efficient. And so we stop, you know, yelling at people for doing remodel, but we actually look at, you know, here's the new data, and this is the policy change that everyone made on Earth Day of 2020, here's now 2 years of built environment data. And, you know, maybe that's 100 homes, but it would be nice to see that those policy changes I'm repeating. I don't know who joined next. I would want to say Cliff. Jasmine, thank you.
You're welcome.
You want my 3 main areas, or do you want me to be a little more granular? Which
I would say we're trying to stay at the strategy level, but also just give it a little bit of bite, and a little bit of teeth. That we're trying to basically call it the AIS, but it's the agenda item summary, if you will, that comes from P&Z that we give to the BOCC in advance and say, look, these are the 3 things that we want to talk about for the next 2 hours. And so this way, we don't come in with 30, whatever 9 times 3 is. We don't come in with 27 things. We come in with, here's the focus, here's how they relate to the community survey, the macro picture. And if we just do these 3 things over the next year, we think we're going to have an impact on the community.
Okay. My number 1 is growth management. I thought it interesting in the survey that the survey said that the percentage of approval for growth management, the way it's been handled, dropped from 47% to 21%. And that reflects pretty much how I feel about it. To be a little more granular, TDR reform and how it affects rural and remote, and the loopholes that we have directly at P&Z had to deal with and will continue to deal with. GMQS competitions and house caps and build out. All of this goes to number 2 with me, which is maintaining the environment, but not just physical environment. I kind of look at it more of those of us who live here permanently and our quality of life. I think growth management, you're seeing it in all the discussions of what they're having to do to protect the maroon bells and anybody who's ridden the bike down the Rio Grande knows that we're almost too popular, and it is changing our quality of life. So number 2 for me is maintaining the environment, protect environmentally sensitive areas. Number 3 for me would be climate. And I'm sorry that it's not first, because I know for some of you it is, but I do think that there are, we should continue, I think, what's been started, but there already is an evolution going on when it comes to climate. I'm specifically referring to EVs. And I think we could participate more in proliferating EVs and being done with cars, combustible engine vehicles. That's it for me.
Thank you. Zach, or no, Chelsea, you're unmuted. Chelsea.
Sure. Hey guys, I'll go next. Thanks for all of your feedback. Happy New Year. Nice to see everyone again. I agree with a lot of the prior comments that other co-commissioners have made, including Cliff and Jasmine. I actually had some of the same things that you guys spoke about written down for myself too, so I don't want to be repetitive. But I do also appreciate Laura's introduction to the subject of communication, because that was the concept that I walked away from the 1-hour commission presentation focused on, and really eager. I know we all are eager to get back to an in-person environment and communicating in person. One of the survey factors, or one of the results, said that word of mouth was the best way that people were communicating with each other about community-wide issues and county-wide issues. And word of mouth really doesn't happen over Zoom all the time. It happens when you're seeing people face to face, and being able to go into the county in person to talk to the staff members and to sit in on a meeting like this, it's nearly impossible. But I will tell you, I've been traveling around the world and I've been going to Rolling Stone concerts with 50,000 people, and I go to the Belly Up, and I think that we can start feeling safe about having in-person meetings one of these days again soon. And so I highly encourage us to start considering getting back to meeting in person with this. You know, we're getting close to the end of the pandemic, and we should start putting on the horizon, communicating with each other face to face for these type of conversations and meetings. Like I said, I agree with a lot of Cliff's comments, especially with regard to preserving the existing environment in Aspen. And one of the points that people responded to in the survey, it talks about how you manage growth, because I think growth management is an important thing, but how do you manage the growth? And I think one of the most important things we should focus on is preservation of the historic quality of Pitkin County. I love living here. I live across the street from the History Museum on Bleecker Street. And so I appreciate that. I love the history of the Aspen Institute 3 blocks from my house. I love being in this neighborhood and having a historic quality. I know I'm in the city, not the county, but generally speaking, I think that the mining history of the county and the style of architecture and the low density historic quality should be maintained. So that's the high point for me. And then I also really think Jasmine's point is very interesting about how the county is collecting funds from development related fees and spending that on affordable housing, and communicating that to the public is a really important thing that the county and planning and zoning should look at, so that we understand the policy that we're implementing and how it's implemented, and communicating that out to the rest of the community so that they understand where the money is going and how it's being accounted for. So those are my takeaways from the survey as far as interesting factors. I look forward to having this conversation with everyone face to face someday soon, because I'm done with Zoom in my mind, and I would really like to work with all of you in person. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Chelsea. Zach.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so my top 3 were, my number 1 is the GMQS system, and how we can fix that, along with what Cliff mentioned, the TDR system. Those are sort of at the top of my list, just because I heard recently, and this is public record, that a TDR just sold for $1.8 million, and there's none of them left. And I think that's gonna, I'm sure staff can let us know, but I think that's gonna create a huge demand for the GMQS system. And we've been working on this, trying to fix this thing, and we know that it's a flawed system, and we've been working on trying to fix it for a while. We know that there's loopholes in the system, so I think that's something that we can fix or try to bite off right away, and that's going to have a ripple effect that's going to fix a lot of other issues, hopefully. And then I had affordable housing and growth management.
Any other specifics for county commissioners for Laura?
No.
We have her for 11 minutes.
No, I'm good. That's it.
And any other commissioner comments before I turn it over to myself? Thank you. I guess I'm going to try to give you 3 of my own, and I'm going to frame them again within the framework that Laura presented. So I'm going to start with quality of life as a flourishing natural environment. And I think this is where access to public lands, access to current easements, and where land use dovetails with access to the natural environment is that we have management plans in place to protect the public interest and access. And I view the pandemic as been the grossest violation of easements, of access to public lands, of the disappearance of trailhead signs. And again, I'm just wearing maybe the Bohan Gulch hat, but I think we as a community can't allow the transfer of land to new entities unless they accept the easements and the policies and the management plans that were in place. And so, I think that's, it's a threat to where we live. It's, when we look around and the signs are disappearing, up the street for where we used to hike, that's a major threat, I think, to the quality of life and the natural environment. So that would be one, which is, again, sort of the erosion of my trust in open space, I guess, and the ability of neighbors to close off what were 1,000-acre easements and no longer exist today. Number two, I will put as the county's efforts to mitigate the impacts of climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Again, 2 years ago, we updated the land use code and adopted stricter building, maybe we didn't know that we'd have this rash of remodels, but the question is, how have we done? I'm not a fan of this embodied energy fascination the county seems to have, that dictating to someone they can't use Val's, marble, I think is a losing effort. But saying the operations and maintenance of a building for the next 20, 30 years, that should be in the county's purview. So I think the county's wasting time and money on the greenhouse gas studies, on the embodied energy studies, and they should be focused on greenhouse gas and reducing emissions from building, which is HVAC systems, outmoded refrigerants, everything we're doing that pollutes the environment locally. And I've got more details on that if you need it. So number two is, reducing the built environment's impact and reducing greenhouse gas emissions locally. And the third one I'll throw out, which is affordable housing. How do we solve for both quantity and quality? Maybe it's a dovetail of what Chelsea said and Cliff said, which is, let's just remove all the gas stations along Highway 82. We have our own TODs, our own transportation-oriented development. We put in EV charging stations, 3-story mixed use, and it just looks like Willits the whole way up Highway 82. So there's a little bit of jest, well, there's a lot of jest in there, but we've talked about that as planning and zoning before, which is, how do you expand municipal services, whether that's in the PBJ, the Pitkin Basalt Junction, whether that's in Old Snowmass. It seems to me we still have not seen the deliverable of where could we build out affordable access to transportation and in some quantity, and is that just inside the UGB? So those are my three. And I hope that was somewhat informative. So, and I'm going to throw out a fourth just for giggles, which is Colorado State Statute Bill 35 regulates subdivision of land. If everyone's really worried about growth, can we increase the size of a parcel you would need to land a TDR or a GMQS award? So in other words, right now, we all lost sleep over Ajax Valley View. Could we, instead of doing a lot split going 270s, become 235s, and we now have two houses? Could we still, within state statute, reduce that to 140 acres? So in essence, we protected and preserved open space, certainly in rural and remote, to an even greater degree than we have today. And we don't end up looking like Orange County. So that was my Laguna Beach Irvine joke for the evening. Thank you for listening to my 3-minute rant. I'm conscious of the fact that we have 6 more minutes of Laura's time. Any thoughts or feedback based on what you just heard from the planning commissioners this evening? And sorry to put you on the spot. We can't hear you, sorry.
No.
We totally appreciate you joining us though.
Thank you. Yeah, it's strange. I think maybe I have to get close to my computer for it to catch in Zoom. No, I think you all are wrestling with some really, big questions. I guess one of the things that comes to mind for me is the intent of the survey this year was really to become more useful for the policy level questions. In addition to then having these granular questions about satisfaction with services. So as you read through, you'll see questions that fall into those two buckets. And I know that there's sort of like some middle ground in between there that may be lost. But the policy level discussion and pulling that data out of the survey, I believe, is what the BOCC, where the BOCC is starting. So I thought that may, just for the rest of your conversation, may be useful context for, continuing on that level. And that I hear a lot of, dropping down into more specific areas. And I don't know that this survey in particular will have a lot of use for you on that more granular level, but when it comes to satisfaction and the importance that the community places on those policy level questions, that was really what we were trying to achieve with some big changes that we did to the survey this year.
Thank you for the wonderful work and for your time. And again, apologies for the short notice. I hope you'll join us 4 p.m. on the 25th for a 2-hour, hug session with the county commissioners, just to see how this all comes together in a week's time. So thank you. And we let you go 3 minutes early, unless anyone has any questions for Laura. Again, thanks for your time. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you all. And it's nice to meet you.
Thanks, Laura. Suzanne, Alex, or Ellen, I guess you've heard from most of us. There seems to be a little bit of consensus, but again, I think where I personally would like to get to a week from tonight would be sort of a single memo that comes from planning and zoning that says, here's the most important things and here's what we'd like to see, because out of it, we'd love to see some land use code actually written that might take months to do. And correct me if I'm wrong.
I'd like to clarify, when you say that comes from planning and zoning, are you suggesting that it comes from literally, Jeffrey, you're drafting it based on this conversation? Or when you say planning and zoning, are you asking staff to put together an agenda item summary for that joint meeting based on what we've heard tonight? I assume that's where you're going. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, what I heard from the county commissioners was they didn't, going in with complete focus and saying, these are the 3 things that we've all agreed upon. It's climate growth and, embodied energy. And then the 2 hours spent, because it's now 18 people or whatever it is, 12 people, is really productive. We're not going to pose the same question a week from tonight, which is, Jeffrey, what are your top 3? It's actually, here's planning and zoning's top 3. We're just giving you a heads up so we can actually have some really detailed conversations. Like Greg Postman, I know, wants to spend time in L&E, and I've prepared a response to him on, what I think about L&E. And, we can clarify that for him in advance of the meeting. And so it's really just, sorry, I come out of a corporate world and you guys can elect a new chair tonight, but I'm used to, there's no surprises at a meeting and we go in with, this is exactly what we want to talk about. So the answer is yes, Ellen.
That certainly makes sense. My question, I guess, was just whether you would like staff to take the conversation tonight and put it into an agenda item summary so that the board is clear on what your top priorities are. And then there will be an opportunity at the meeting to go into some detail on those topics. Is that what you're suggesting? And then I see that Suzanne has her hand up as well.
Ellen recognizes Suzanne.
If I, yeah, how about you? I would vote for just that, because I think if we try to come up with it, say, Jeffrey, if I was elected to come up with it, my particular biases, I think, would play in. And I think that that would be the same for you or anybody else. But in this case, Suzanne Wolf and Ellen know what the charge was to us. They also know what the Board of County Commissioners is looking for. And I think they can summarize what they've heard tonight. I think they'd be the best candidates to do that.
And that's my understanding. I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
Uh,
Yes. No.
No, I think the answer, again, I'd love to be in the board pack with, here's what P&Z puts forward. And sorry about the nuance of whether that's crafted by Ellen or crafted by Suzanne Caskey. I'm somewhat indifferent. I think it's really just taking the tenor of this conversation and providing these guys the background in advance of the meeting, and not showing up the meeting, we're there to discuss this memo, as opposed to we just go various and sundry for 2 hours.
Ellen and Suzanne, what do you think you need to take us forward, accompany us to the BOCC? What do you think your charge is?
Suzanne, you're not going to jump in here. Unless, do you want to start and I'll follow, or did you not have a comment?
No, you can go. I'll follow.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think the conversation thus far has indicated what you believe to be the top 3 priorities based on your review of the community survey. And, that is the charge. The board wanted to have that discussion. I don't know to what, I don't think we're going to get into a great level of detail at the work session about how that relates to specific code changes. But I think it makes sense. That is the charge. And I think that we can put together a memo that outlines your priorities and general direction moving forward based on the conversation tonight. I don't think we're going to get into a lot of specifics, but Suzanne, I don't know if you have more thoughts relating to that or not.
I don't think I have anything to add there. I think, right. I think that's what we're expecting. I know the board also, you, Ellen and Ellen and Alex and Cindy presented to the board today about the process moving forward with a bigger community conversation. And again, I think the intention tonight was to talk to you a little bit about what the board talked about today. And I think that could be helpful. And then to have the P&Z chew on that a little bit before next week, just because I think there's a big question there about, this idea about, can we actually move quickly on anything? Or is everything just, going to have to go through such a big public process that will we ever get anywhere? I mean, I think that's a struggle we're having, and I think the board's having, and I don't know how much the P&Z's been, involved with all of that. So I guess, again, knowing that discussion happened a little bit today, I think helpful to make that a part of this conversation.
So yeah, I can follow up a little bit on that. On a couple of things, both the conversation that the board is having about public outreach relating to growth management moving forward. And then also I want to fill you in on some of the analysis and data that staff has been generating since 2020 to inform that growth management discussion. But as to process and how we get to some resolution on these topics, as you may recall, in 2020, we had conducted a fairly extensive public outreach process to identify community aspirations and priorities relating to growth management. And then we came to the board with some recommendations for moving forward, specifically on growth management. And there was quite a public outcry. And long story short, the board directed us to go back to the drawing board in terms of public outreach, to conduct a more robust public outreach process, and to also develop some more data to be used in developing policies relating to growth management. And so today, Cindy presented a possible public outreach scenario, based on a couple of different phases involving the public. And without going into great detail about that process, the idea was to include the public early on to develop aspirations, make sure that we were on the right page, and then to put together an advisory committee, a steering committee of sorts that would then relate recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners regarding future policies. And the Board of County Commissioners responded by saying it's something they're going to talk about in their retreat, but they weren't sure whether it made sense to have a prolonged public outreach process again, and with the fear that that would put off making decisions relating to growth management too far. There was some inclination to try to do a process where the public and the board were moving together, I guess, in more of a synchronized approach, so that there wouldn't be such a prolonged period of time associated with taking action on growth management. We're not sure how that's going to play out, where the board's going to go and what direction they will give us after their retreat. But that was the conversation that was had today. And Jeffrey, it sounds like you listened in as well. And I don't know if that was your take on the discussion that was had. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so the BOCC today had, I guess, 2 sessions with you guys. So I would agree. I think there's the question of the quick fix. You know, what can we do, and what's the larger public outreach process? You know, and there was no decisions made. The side comments, you know, if you will, from individual members of the county commissioners, you know, they've obviously gone through quite a few L&Es, so they want to get our feedback on L&E, which is, again, you know, could be in an AIS, but you know, we've certainly had our share of bad taste, location, and extent over the last couple of years, so we can share, you know, with Greg some details from a planning and zoning perspective on that. And you're shaking your head. So we did L&E for fire, for Cozy Point, and for Brush Creek. So, you know, it's all about poop and parking lots here at planning and zoning.
But to start with the public process piece, do you all have any opinion as to whether we should try to put together a process that has a fairly robust public input component, or whether we should be moving towards a more quick fix to the issues that have been identified relating to growth management in particular, or whether we should be coming up? Do you have any as to how best to structure that, the approach to addressing growth management in the next year? Any thoughts? What do you think works in terms of moving forward and coming up with a successful outcome in terms of changing policies and regulations, if that's the direction that's required?
I will just amplify, I guess, one of the things that one of the board members said. This is not an opinion, but again, there's the view of the quick fix, and there's the view of a longer term advisory. And their view was that even if it's a quick fix, people do show up. So once there's action, there's something on the table, you know, there's 6 hearings, if you will, 3 at P&Z and 3 at the county commissioner level, the public does show up. And so that, again, that wasn't Jeffrey Woodruff's opinion, but that was just sort of a restatement of what was said today by the county commissioners. And so I'll throw it back to the planning and zoning You know, we as planning zoning, most of us have been here through two, either participated and or we were here for the energy working group, which I would say was highly successful. And we were here for the growth management group, which you know, which is why we're in this current state. So I'll throw it back to the planning and zoning commissioners. If you have feedback on, you know, whether we should be doing the quick fix route and, you know, kind of to your three issue items, updating GMQS, TDR system, et cetera, or, you know, going back down again, sort of this more exasperated, that is my professional opinion, public process route, you know, vis-a-vis an advisory committee that maybe is, you know, maybe it's interviewed the same way the airport advisory is, as opposed to self-selecting, you know, the way we've done the last two, both the energy working group and the growth management group. So thoughts from the planning. So Cliff has his both hands up.
You know, my recollection of 2020 and the BOCC sending us all back to a more robust public process was it had more to do with the 5250 exemption being lowered and less to do with what we really, you know, my list or our list of TDR reforms and GMQS competitions and house caps. I mean, obviously there would have to be a public process for these three things, but putting it in the newspaper, apparently came out of the survey to me, or what was even said this evening, is people read newspapers. I just feel as though we've been discussing this for years and nothing has happened. And I'm well past wanting to talk about it anymore and want to get into some of the meat to actually have some code or something to start looking at to determine. So to me, it's really a matter of next steps. It's not just telling them what they've heard from all of us, telling them being the BOCC, what we want to do next. They've heard it from us for years. So now it's really next steps. Sorry, I'm being blunt. That's my rant.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's not blunt. That's direct. Thanks.
Other commissioners with either virtual or real hands? Suzanne.
I know over time, what we've learned again and again is that we're better off if we go to the public first and get them very involved and then move forward. But that used to be the case. I'm not sure it is anymore. And I've tried to pull out of this this mix that I'm not a very patient person, and I continue to try to develop that quality. But I feel like Cliff, you know, there are times when enough is enough. And I think that the same group with the same opinions will come forward whether we move along more quickly or if we wait and drag it out. Because if we wait and drag it out, that I don't think that benefits the county overall. I think we ought to start moving forward. I think that for the BOCC members to, maybe this is the right term, or the kindest term, to punt to another advisory committee, that time I think is over, at least for me. I think we just have to be clear-eyed and straightforward and say what we mean and do things like Cindy has been telling us for some time about zoning. Zone it like you mean it. We've seen now with rural and remote, if you wanted it, then protect it and keep on protecting it. I would say start moving forward, take more action, and just stop punting it all over the place.
Again, I would say there were a few people on the county commissioners that felt the same way. And obviously most of them have the history in the room. And that was echoed publicly today.
Good.
You know, both meetings with staff. So Chelsea, Zach, or Jasmine, I guess the conversation, the plot is really around the quick fix or versus a vetted advisory group or something. Your thoughts?
I really don't know what to say. I don't really have an opinion because I just don't know.
That's fair. I appreciate it. It's again, I think the committee members that have been here for a couple of years, we've seen again that I can only talk to the two working groups and obviously the airport advisory. And you know, I don't know if the county commissioners want to go through another airport advisory like public session where they vet people for inclusion about an overall growth committee. And I'm not hearing that either from planning and zoning this evening, nor from the county commissioners in my listening to their meetings. Zach or Chelsea, thoughts? Either going back to the overall what we're presenting to the commissioners, or you know, bringing to the commissioners a week from tonight, or your thoughts on process. So, and if you don't have thoughts, then I'd like to move quickly. Ellen and Suzanne, do we have enough to, or Zach, sorry, before we go back to Ellen and Cindy.
Yeah. So my thoughts really quickly is
and then Chelsea.
Is we are the specialized committee. Like we're the planning and zoning. This is like this is the micro detailed, the nerd stuff. This isn't like short-term rentals in the city. This isn't the airport. This stuff shouldn't be sexy. This
Right.
is our job to dig into it and to get into the details of that's on a level, you know, I always see the BOCC, they deal with stuff on a macro level. They're big picture. So they're going to deal with climate change on a big picture, and they're going to deal with affordable housing on a big picture. And they're looking to us to do all this hard work and really get into the detail of why GMQS doesn't work, or what zoning applications we would recommend. It's changes that would have a long-term effect or a short-term effect on a lot of different things, and how we can help them. So that's what I would say is we're the board. We're it. I don't know. I mean, it always is. I don't know how much I don't know how much, how many applications you'd have for somebody from a community. And I could be totally wrong. There could be they could be pouring in, but I mean, this is not sexy stuff, and it shouldn't be. It's planning and zoning. So the BOCC is going to look to us. Hopefully that's our job. They're looking to us for this micro detail approach. And that's all.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm hearing sorry, from Zach, from your comments, really that you would welcome a detailed agenda item summary coming from staff that's based on this evening's conversation.
Yeah, I think that's just the way that you said it earlier, Jeffrey, is you come to them with exactly what you want to talk about, bullet points. Here's what we have, and you don't waste their time, because they have a lot of different stuff. They have a lot of different fish to fry. So and they're looking to us for our specific expertise, because we've been doing this for a long time. Like 2020, I can't even remember. I mean, that seems like 1,000 years ago of stuff, but yeah, we're going to get more done, and they're going to appreciate how we use their time if we come with just, this is what we want to talk about, this is what we think, and that's it.
So what would be the most, I guess, and sorry, I'll turn it over to Chelsea in a second. Ellen and Suzanne, what do you need to, I'm assuming the memo is probably due Thursday or Friday, given the packet's probably got to go out Thursday or Friday.
Sooner than that.
Yeah. So if we each, you know, and I'm not trying to make this, I don't personally want to collate it because I don't want to influence the memo, but can we each send our typed handwritten list to you? How would you like to get this? I don't believe that all the nuances are audible. Can we each send you something this evening before we hang up, and it says, look, here's the prioritized list, and out of that you can vet it and, I don't want to say collate, but organize it.
It looks like Cliff wants to weigh in. Why don't we hear from Cliff and then I'll respond.
I got Chelsea first and then Cliff. She did a like,
Sure, I'm happy to chime in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate Ellen's comments about what it would look like if we did some sort of a wide outreach program. And I generally don't think now is the time for that, just because there was a survey conducted. I think I agree with Zach that we need to just drill down on these issues and do a better job communicating them as we go about our business, keeping in mind the community's responses to what is important to them regarding development and land use, and use that as like our guiding and making decisions as we do our jobs. Remembering what the community has given us as feedback, that's important. And I do agree we should be real succinct. I'm happy to type 3 sentences and send it to whomever is preparing a memo with what I think are the nuances of what's important to the community that I'd like to discuss with the BOCC next week, and be efficient with everyone's time. So, but I don't necessarily think we need some sort of community-wide outreach to discuss these development-related issues. We just need to do the work ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Cliff, and then Alex, I'm going to turn it back to you to see if you have anything, because you've been thankfully eavesdropping for an hour of your thoughts. Cliff.
I'm concerned that just going with essentially a memo that says we want TDR reform, for instance, without spelling out, well, what are the elements of TDR reform that P&Z and staff think should be made. And I don't think we're ready to go to BOCC with something that starts moving things forward. It's just outlining what they've heard from us for the past several years, including 2020, isn't going to do anything unless we tell them what we want. I mean, again, I'm just using TDR reform as an example. Changes to what a donor site would be and where it could be versus a landing site. Giving them some detail as to how many of them there are in both ends. We've seen a lot of this data, but to just go to them with a list of our 3 big items, growth management is just another way of spinning a wheel. And I think P&Z and staff need to work together to put down the details of where we see things on these big issues. And that could be made public, how what process we see things taking.
Alex.
Yeah, so thank you, P&Z, for having me here and a part of this. This has been great to hear. As Ellen mentioned, I'm going to be a little more involved in this growth management process outreach. And it's an ever evolving thing. We definitely, what we had originally drawn up months ago now has gone through several iterations to what we recently presented to the BOCC today. And we had heard from them there's some fatigue with more of going out to a public outreach, something similar to the airport. So again, that's really changing. I think the comments we heard here are great too for that joint meeting. There's a lot of similarities that I'm seeing. And Cliff, to your point, I think a little more specifics are great, whether it's for the BOCC or whether it's just to have to start building out all of the different areas that could be addressed, because I think everybody does have their own ideas. There's a lot of great ideas there, but it's just even documenting all of that to share. The other thing that I've really kind of been more involved in is the data side of it. We've recently gone to a digital permitting system. We've got a lot of great information there. We've scraped what we could from our legacy system. So now we've actually got numbers to be able to start talking to the story. We've also got a number of contracts that are out currently looking at embodied energy, greenhouse gas emission, and then economic analysis. So I think we're able to bring a lot to this as well, with good information that helps make sure that you guys are making the most informed decision, and the BOCC. So a lot of those contracts are kind of nearing completion. Once those are done, we're also looking, excited to bring that information into the conversation so we can talk about, things like some of the amendments you've done, several years back. How is that affecting what the actual built environment and greenhouse gas emissions? So really excited time. I think if we're talking action items, I'm always happy to get a list as detailed as you guys want it, to even just start building out, kind of this grand chart of what's possible, what are some actionable things, so that way, if we're coming out of that joint meeting and the BOCC and you guys have clear direction of, let's sit in there and let's look at this TDR, as I've heard mentioned. Well, great, then we can start kind of pulling some things from what everybody's heard and start giving different options. That's where I really think is helpful, giving options of things we can address. And then we start, reaching that common consensus. So that's just what I share, from sitting here. Again, I appreciate the time. A lot of great discussion, kind of excited to see where this goes in 2022.
Thanks for joining us, and I hope you're there next week for the joint meeting. So thank you. And Suzanne Wolf is just joining us in the gray and black striped sweater. I also think it might be Joe. And Joe, we've just done a round where we elected you the board president for 2022 in your absence. We also believe that you will be running the meeting with the joint meeting with the BOCC.
Okay, I'll take over right now. You can shut up. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Hearing no motion, I'll make a motion sua sponte. No, just kidding. But anyway, yeah, I know you're pulling my leg. I've been there in your role. Anyway, sorry I got here late.
No, we really appreciate you being here. And the conversation's largely been about dovetailing on the back of the community survey, the 501 people, how with what we're doing at P&Z, what specifically should we bring to the county commissioners a week from tonight, 4 p.m. And so we'd love to hear your homework, Joe, and the 3 things that are keeping you awake at night from a planning perspective.
Okay. Well, I think that, I don't know, it's hard, I did watch the presentation that was at BOCC yesterday. I thought that was interesting. Of course, I don't know. I'm sure everyone, whatever, felt that those results were validated and so on and so forth. I think obviously the big ones are growth, and that has a number of facets to it. And what we've experienced over the last 2 years with the COVID rush of people into our community. We're a free country. People are entitled to live where they want, but it's gotten fairly oppressive, I would say. I do have some concerns about specific projects that have been discussed recently, and I think that this growth is got a number of tentacles that come off of the monster. And one of them is, I guess, talking about growth in terms of affordable housing. And if we want to slow things down, then just make sure there's no employees in town, and maybe that's the best route to go. Of course, that's like, okay, we want to eliminate traffic problems. We'll just quit repairing the roads, and if the roads were all, beat up like Taylor Pass, you wouldn't have as much traffic. But, those are probably not the greatest solutions in the world in terms of what's going on. But I do have some concern about, growth, not just in the free market, but, growth in what we're seeing in affordable housing. I think we're getting some leakage now just in terms of, for example, the Phillips Trailer Park program. was pretty much sacrosanct for years that affordable housing projects are not happening outside the urban growth boundary. I know the Aspen, Mass property was discussed as a great location for additional housing. Of course, this goes back a decade or more. That's the property that's directly across from Brush Creek Village, right off the highway. And, great location in terms of transit and so on, fairly close to town and so on. But it was taken off the table. And so I don't know, I think that, that's one of the big discussions I think that needs to happen. Are we going to continue to be a rural county, or are we just going to be, rural in the sense that it's rural from a free markets perspective, and then there's a lot of affordable housing. One of the items that was on my list that wasn't on the discussion of the points that we had, and maybe it's my own issue or whatever, which is enforcement. So we got all these great rules and stuff on the books. Of course, I live in Woody Creek. People in Woody Creek do what they want, right? So you take, for example, well, I'm not going to name any names, but there was a big ranch that recently sold, and a luminary of the county. Turns out, there's no building permits for the 3 or 4 houses, and septics that were done without permits, and I see around Woody Creek, and maybe that's just because where I live, but I've seen several projects where people undertake, like a lot of work, building buildings, roads, grading, cutting down trees. They don't bother getting permits. And so I guess, all the rules and regulations we have are great, but what happens when it comes to enforcement? And I think that enforcement is super thin in the county. No one wants to, go toe to toe with some of the people, and and some of the people are just, total recalcitrants. And no matter what you do, they're just gonna do their own thing and do what they want. I mean, I think the only time that the county's actually taken a serious, maybe not the only time, but was on Wink or Wilk rather, Wilk Wilkeson, who built up on top of Smuggler. And then, ultimately the county came and demoed his building. But, I could give you examples throughout Woody Creek where buildings are being built and they got 0 permits. And so anyway, maybe that's just one of my pet peeves that, we have all these regulations, but when it comes down to enforcing all those regulations, it's pretty thin. Anyway, so that's my kind of 2 cents. I think that, growth is super important, and growth management, I think we're going to have that discussion on the TDR program. TDR program is going nuts. I think that's good, frankly, but I'm not really weighing in on the merits of things. But there was an article recently about whatever. Okay, well, $1.6 million. So I reviewed a contract the other day, $2.1 million for a TDR. So, that is, that I think is a big discussion that's going to be coming up when we get the greenhouse gas emission study and so on.
So Joe, the other question that that each of the commissioners basically got to entertain was, do you believe there are some quick fixes that are in order with respect to TDR's GMQS competition? I won't say exemption, but competition, that we should bring sort of to the top of the memo or the top of the meeting with the BOCC. So it's still a public process. It's still going to go through 6 meetings, P&Z and BOCC. Or, would you fall back to the ever popular, Growth Advisory Committee? I couldn't come up with a better acronym. Sorry.
It's going to, those are tough issues. I think they're all tough issues. Maybe there's some low-hanging fruit in the 15,000. I think as we, look at other things, that's going to be highly contentious in the county. But definitely something we need to take a look at. I think that everybody is sick of it. Everybody's sick of all the all the traffic, all the people, all the construction, and things getting overwhelmed. in our, you know, in our little area of paradise here.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This is tough making those decisions.
Anything else, Joe? You're good. Suzanne Caskey.
Yes, Jeffrey, I think that what you were referring to in speaking to Joe about that was should have been the question of what sort of process do you think we should go through moving forward with all of our concerns? And the BOCC is grappling with this. Should they form another advisory committee to do the public outreach and have the public hearings or gather the information, or should they just start going for what developing the listing of their priorities as representatives of the county? So either the quick fix or do it like we've done it before, and not the quick fix, the quicker process.
We've again, and someone else could chime in, but over the last couple of years, we've written land use code. You know, we've done land use code text amendments. We just did them with Joanna a couple weeks ago. We did it obviously for employee impact fee. We've done it for pick another one, guys. Help me out here. I'm from the 60s. I'm old. There have been other times where we basically we've changed the GMQS competition, you know, without having to fall back to, you know, a public committee on top of a public committee and months of public outreach. So there have been other fixes along the way that have not involved, you know, larger advisory committees. So if that made sense. Suzanne and Ellen were at about 6:20. I think you also wanted to speak about master plans this evening and the bevy plethora of master plans that are about to fall in our lap. I know it is one of our requirements as per state statute. And the other thing is that in addition to electing Joe to be president this evening, we need to elect a vice president. And I realize it's the first meeting of the year, so as much as I enjoy being primus inter pares, there might be someone else who would love to raise their hand and guide this Burko calendar compensated board for the next year. Suzanne or Ellen, back to you.
Sure. I mean, I was going to give a very brief update on master plans, the progress that we're making with master plans and anticipated schedule, but I want to make sure that that we've completed the conversation relating to your joint meeting with the board next week. It seems as though we've gotten some pretty good feedback on both the question of process for growth management and other land use code policies moving forward, and also some specifics on topic priorities. I think we've gotten enough on that. Suzanne, unless someone has something to add, which we'd be glad to hear. Suzanne, do you have anything more that you'd like to get before I move into a brief overview of master plan timing?
Jeffrey, did you want to jump in before?
It's somewhat related. Do we need to touch on L&E for Greg specifically? And because it's nice amongst ourselves to ask the question and then go back to him. I wrote down 3 thoughts on L&E, but I don't know his issue or question. Why is he coming back to P&Z about it? And again, I've got a few thoughts, but I don't, I'd rather P&Z says, here's really the thoughts with regards to location and extent.
So maybe just before we jump to a new topic, I think in terms of putting together a memo for the BOCC for next week, I guess what we just need to decide is if you just want staff to take our notes, which I think, we were all scribbling down your topic lists. Again, it's going to be pretty basic what we're going to present to the BOCC, and here's what looks like the top three, and here are all the issues, different other things that were raised. I mean, I think we want to give them kind of the whole laundry list, as well as cull from that. Sure, everybody's top three seem to fall in the categories of growth, climate, whatever, whatever those three are, and then also give them the list. I don't know if we need everyone to email us, because then we're just going to be compiling everybody's stuff. So I guess first question is, are you comfortable with us kind of taking our notes to translate into a short memo to BOCC? We can reach out to, I guess we're just missing Monty and.
Monty's online. Monty's online.
Oh, Monty is online? Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay.
We're missing the Maltese man.
Yvonne. Anyway, just to see if, to get their items as well. If Monty's on, we can get that. But again, I wasn't thinking we needed you all to write something to send to us to then have us compile. I feel pretty comfortable going with the notes we have at this point, if you guys are okay with that.
Heads are all shaking.
Some nods there. Okay, perfect. And just a quick thought on, Ellen and Cindy and I exchanged a few messages about, Greg's comments. And I mean, I think he brought up Eleni, and I don't know what this, specific project was he's speaking of, but I think the question is more, are you all feeling comfortable that the master plans are addressing, the important issues that they need to address? So when they are used in the, as part of a location and extent review, because that's our primary criteria at that point, is consistency with the master plan. Are you all feeling like the master plans are providing you what you need in that review process? Would you agree with that, Ellen? Kind of is what?
Yeah, I think that was definitely the focus of his comment, his question. Cindy suggested that there was also a question about whether we as staff and the Planning Commission should work with special districts and other jurisdictions that are subject to location and extent review to make sure that their goals are consistent with county policies and goals in general, and especially those identified in master plan. Should we be doing any more work to improve that process from that perspective?
I would echo Greg's comment, and my notes on L&E were that, we did L&Es and 1041s on the ABC, Cozy Point, and the Brush Creek parking lot. Those are the three that we've had, I guess, in the last year to 2 years. And they're all political wranglings that end up in front of a public board like P&Z, where, for example, we're sitting with the city of Aspen and discussing Cozy Point. So it seems like some stuff came to public meeting that might, how can we have a smoother process, if you will? And those are the three I can think of that were L&Es that, the applicant basically looks at us and then goes back to their own board and does what they want. And it sets up an interesting public comment as well as, newspaper story, if that made sense. And someone else might have further thoughts on L&Es that we've had the last couple of years. Is everyone locked, or are you guys just? Okay, thank you for moving. Zach, did you have your hand up? Oh, okay.
I mean, I think L&E in of itself is probably a topic for a different, a more involved. And again, we have limitations, legal limitations, So I think that maybe is Greg sort of going, right?
Yeah.
How do we better get up front so when the L&E shows up, we feel like we're all doing something valuable as opposed to, just going through the motions of getting it through a process.
Yeah, again, I raised it because it was the only substantive thing, meaning non-process, quick fix versus committee that was raised in their prep meeting. And if I missed something, let me know.
And just maybe before, Ellen, I know you were going to talk a little bit about the master plans, but since Monty is on the line, maybe we can have Monty jump in with his top three. So we have everybody spoken for.
That would be great.
You guys are wonderful chairs. I think you got the job. Monty Thompson, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, good. That's the problem. I couldn't get unmuted there. I am so sorry about being late and missing the first part of the meeting. So you guys can hear me?
So Monty, the action for you is, I know there's specific items that are of concern to you personally, professionally, that relate back to the community plan that Laura Armstrong presented earlier. And I think you have a top three list that we would love to hear.
Yeah, so my list, and again, so sorry I missed that first part, but mine is what I call the reduced construction impact plan. Is just different ways to, in the future, to come up with ideas and stuff that reduce the amount of traffic and traffic patterns and stuff and the way construction's done. So I call it a reduced construction impact plan, RCIP. That would be my first one I would like to bring up. And then the second is the repurpose reuse landfill plan. And I call it like mining our landfills. And I think that the landfill does, a great job, and they've started this, and how can we take it further, about, how we take all the stuff that we're in construction world throwing away, this perfectly good stuff, and how do we repurpose and reuse that? And part of that is like maybe putting different structures on the landfill itself that will be able to triage and move stuff to other areas that just doesn't get buried, especially if if redevelopment is going to be the majority of future construction in the future, versus new construction, or if we're tearing down old buildings, how can we do that? And then the third one that I wanted to bring up was just any kind of pathway to promote solar covered carports and parking structures, even different buildings around town, like on our landfills, or like the intercept lot, or in private residences if they don't have garages, somehow to be able to help produce more solar areas and the infrastructure that would support that, as far as getting the electricity back to the grids. So those are my 3 points.
Thank you. Any questions for Monty? So Monty, today, Kathy Hall presented an update to Pitkin County Landfill, its expansion, and one of the unmet needs she described was architectural salvage. And she's looking for someone that would potentially take the sources that she can't use and divert them. And, counties like Boulder obviously have, they do a much better job, if you will, at handling usable building materials. And so Kathy brought that up as late as today. There's other people echoing the same thoughts as you, Monty.
Yeah, and I would love to. I don't have all the answers, but I have some ideas about it. I'd love to sit and talk with her and other people, or anybody, about these 3 ideas. I like I say, it's not that I have the answers to each one of these things, but I do have some questions that might bring up some ideas that can help solve these issues. To me, they're 3 of the bigger issues we have in the county.
Yeah. Thank you. And I agree with you. I think the last one's interesting. It's what's next after Pitkin County Solar, now that Pitkin County Solar is online.
Yep.
Have we talked our meeting to death? Ellen, please bring us out of the doldrums. But I would like to hold board elections because it is a new year. And I know there are some of you that are looking to improve upon your curriculum vitae, and you believe that the primus inter pares role would be a fantastic addition. So for those of you that speak Latin, go for it. But Ellen, the floor is yours.
I will be quick. We have 3 master plans in progress right now. The Brush Creek master plan is actually, we're working with Tim Malloy, who's a consultant that many of you know. He's working with us on getting the Brush Creek master plan, both the existing conditions report and the draft plan update completed. And we're hoping to bring that to you in a work session initially with the Board of County Commissioners in March. I don't have the dates in front of me. And then I think that's early to mid-March. And then we hope to bring that to you, assuming that work session goes pretty smoothly, for adoption at the end of March. So Brush Creek will be the next plan you'll see. And then we are working on the Castle Creek and East of Aspen Independence master plans. We're working on those together because we found that they have so many common elements that it makes sense to do public outreach on both of them at the same time. So we've held several public outreach meetings on both of those plans. We have heard from the Castle Creek caucus that they'd like to slow down the process a bit because they now have several people within their caucus that would like to be involved. And they'd like us to do mailing and do some more work on their side of things. So we anticipate bringing you those 2 plans together for review in April. And then with a hope for adoption date in early May. So that's where we are on those 3 plans. The Owl Creek plan will follow. We do have a draft of that plan, but we haven't started the public process or outreach there. And then it's conceivable that we'll get to I don't know that we'll get to what we're calling the Basalt Junction plan this year or not. That's still out there. We're still looking, hoping to get that in progress, but in process, I should say. But right now, we don't have any dates associated with that planning process. So that's what we've got coming your way. March, April, and May, you should anticipate seeing Brush Creek, Castle Creek, and East of Aspen Independence plans. That's really all I have to share unless you want details. I think it's a little late in the evening to go into details, but I'm happy to answer questions.
One question. Are you responsible? Will the build out data be updated for us? So the build out data was presented in Q4 and it was out of date, I think.
The build out, I am working with our GIS department. Actually, they are updating the build out data for all, Tim Malloy on the Brush Creek side has updated that plans, the building data for that planning area. But our GIS department is working on updating build out data for all of the planning areas as we speak. And that it's great because they're actually going to make the zoned build out a layer in our GIS system, so that it will be easily updated. It will not be brain damage every year to try to do it manually. And it will be a dynamic layer that can be easily updated. So yes, that is in process.
And are you anticipating spot updates to master plans from fringe caucuses like Snowmass Creek on that calendar?
We haven't scheduled anything yet in terms of spot updates on master plans that have been updated in the last couple of years, several years. Because we don't have any specific requests that have come in yet. We definitely have had inquiries, but nothing specific has come to us proposed as an amendment. So no, I don't have any dates for you. Those may very well come in. They may not be priorities, given that we really need to get these other master plans updated. because we are working on 2003
Yeah.
master plans for those areas that are, so the three that I mentioned, actually including adding Owl Creek to that mix, are really our priorities right now. We will certainly entertain any requests to update other master plans, but we don't have anything active in process right now.
Thank you for the update. I mean, I think the follow-up question would be, we would love to see from this conversation, we'd love to see the build out data, the employee housing data, the impact of the impact fees. You know, we raised them in 2021. How's that money going? And then I think it's Chelsea's sources and uses question. And then we would love to see the permit data and how we're doing in terms of building efficiency. Because I think that's really the planning and zoning scorecard for the past, several years, in addition to obviously adoption of and updates to master plans. So sorry if that sounded like a segue.
And if I may add to that, we are working with consultants, as Alex alluded to, on regional greenhouse gas emissions inventory that we will bring to you when we have a completed inventory. We're also working on embodied carbon, even though you suggested that's not something we should be focused on. We do have a consultant generating data relating to embodied carbon emissions as they relate to construction. And we're also working on, with a consultant on economic, a look at our local economy and specific sectors within that economy as it relates to the broader regional economy and how we impact and work with that broader regional economy. So all of those will be coming to you. We'll present that data when those reports and those analyses are complete.
Looking forward. It's 6:42 p.m. Would anyone else like to chair these meetings the next Christian year? What? We could go off the Judeo-Christian calendar. We could,
I nominate you to run again.
You like my yard signs? Is that what you're trying to say?
Did you like Stacy's?
We're talking about landfill reduction here.
And I second that nomination.
Suzanne?
I second that nomination.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Passes by acclamation.
I want a free open space calendar.
You do such a great job, Jeffrey. You're always super prepared, very diligent. Fantastic.
Yes, very well prepared.
I like working with you guys, and I am looking forward to next week. And I think it's an important meeting in terms of setting the stage, which is why, I think tonight, again, coming from sort of this pseudo-British Japanese background that I have, that having this meeting, I think will make, make a good impression, if you will. And I do worry that what the BOCC thinks, I guess. So for some unknown reason, I just admitted that. But I'd like both from a staff and from a P&Z perspective to bring a pretty incredible memo to them and say, this is what we've been thinking about and worrying about for the past couple of years. So thank you. Does anyone want to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Anything else we didn't cover? Alex, Suzanne?
I think since you did the chair, I think we should cover the vice chair, which has been Chelsea. And I guess we should probably do the formal vote thing as well on that. So we have it on record.
Can the chair nominate the vice chair? I nominate Chelsea Clark.
I nominate Chelsea.
Oh, Suzanne nominates Chelsea Clark. A second?
Second.
And it's a second by Joe. All those in favor, you can use the ayes.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Aye.
Thanks,
Aye.
And then we, in 2022, we will be taking meeting notes and we're looking for a secretary. Sorry, that was fun.
It was a joke.
Yeah, I know.
Not me.
It's the elevation, it's getting to me. Anyone mind if, anything else we need to do in advance? I'm assuming Bonnie's going to tell us we should be on 15 minutes early. I'm assuming we will have our pictures on the Zoom thing. And, you know, I mean, the only negative I would say is it would be really nice. I don't know why I stress over quorum, but everyone, if they could just respond to Bonnie earlier, even if you don't know, at least just respond to her. She sends out the notes Thursday or Friday for a Tuesday meeting. It's the same as the city of Aspen. It's the same as the county commissioners. You basically get your packet 4 to 5 days. So it's not really different from any other public body lately. But if we could just keep Bonnie in the know, then we're not, you know, searching for quorum 5 minutes before a meeting. And I realize that everyone has their life and they're busy. So I will try to be late for meetings in 2022, just so you see what it feels like.
All right, I move to adjourn. I'm ready for dinner.
Thank you. I enjoy working with everyone. Suzanne Caskey, do you have something else for a second?
I second it.
Ellen, Alex, Bonnie, Suzanne, thanks for, again, staying. And someone did ask me, just so I let everyone know, someone asked me if we could start late, like, you know, because we couldn't start the meeting without Joe. And the answer is, there are 5 o'clock meetings and we start at 5 o'clock. And I'm not trying to sound like, you know, I mean, that's what's publicly noticed and that's what's on the agenda. So we can't just, as a body, say we'll start at 5:30 and the public's called in at 5, that kind of thing. So I hope everyone.
Yeah, my apologies. I had to be at a town council meeting in Snowmass. So
again, totally understood. And I'm assuming everyone is running full bore already in 2022. So totally appreciate it. But if we could try to have quorum at 5, it just makes everyone's life easier. And Joe, it's not picking on you. It's just the general, you know, make Bonnie's life easier. And Cliff is, by the way, already doing vodka shots. He already hung up. So again, Alex, thank you for joining us. And thank you all. And look forward to seeing you at 4 p.m. On Tuesday, the 25th of January.
Next week.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
thanks, everyone.